Good morning. I wasn't able to share with you a couple weeks ago because I was homesick for a few days, and then I was out on vacation last week for Thanksgiving. And so I want to share some thoughts with you today. I'd like to first of all read from Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. On Thanksgiving Day last week, we had dinner at Stephanie and Trainer's house. But in the morning before we had dinner, our two oldest daughters decided that they were going to run in the Omaha Turkey Trot. Now, it's a 5K race. It's not terribly difficult. It's the equivalent of about 3 miles, but it's more than I could do. I thought about preparing for it and training for it and so on, but I didn't do it for two reasons. Number one, I'm old, and number two, I'm fat. And for those reasons, I decided I better hold off for now. Mostly I'm out of shape because I haven't run in a long time. It's just not something that I've done for a very long time. And I don't even like running. In fact, when I was in high school and track, I ran, but I really didn't like it all that much. Now, you've probably heard people joke about this, and by saying, well, if you ever see me running, you had better run too, because either a bear is chasing me or a guy with a knife. And so I would probably say the same thing. Now, we know that running isn't just something that you go out and do. You don't just go out and do it 100% the first time. It takes motivation, and that motivation then leads to action. And that action leads to training. And being intentional about it. And that training leads to being in good condition where you can actually do it efficiently. In other words, I couldn't decide 2 days before the Turkey Trot in Omaha that I was going to run in this race. I told my daughters ahead of time, I said, I'll run the race with you, but on one condition, and that is that the two of you both take CPR training, because after the first mile, I'm going to need to be resuscitated. And so they decided they weren't going to do the CPR training, and I decided I better not do the race either. So anyhow, the writer of Hebrews talks about the spiritual life of the believer in terms of running and conditioning. He says, let us run with perseverance the race that is marked before us. There was a time in my life when I was actually in pretty good condition. I remember coming off of summer where I was working a job and so on, but I wasn't running and I wasn't lifting. I was just doing my job, which was pretty strenuous labor. But I can remember that first week of football practice. And after 2 days of running sprints and 2 days of lifting weights and so on, I was so sore I could hardly walk. And then worse yet, I remember coming out of football season into wrestling season. Now, I don't know if you know this, but football does not involve a terrible amount of conditioning, especially high school football, because you go out and run a play that lasts about 20 seconds, and then you've got about a minute rest before you do it again. And so I came out of football season really out of shape before wrestling season. Wrestling, on the other hand, is 6 minutes of intense hard resistance work with no breaks. In wrestling, you're using every muscle. Your circulatory system is pushed to the max. You're breathing. You're exhausted when you come off the mat, and you're completely pushed to capacity. Spiritually speaking, we also have a hard and intense effort before us as we live this game of life. And in order to face what life sends our way, we have to be spiritually ready to face the obstacles. The writer of Hebrews says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. So how do we do that? The next line kind of tells us how to do that. It says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorned its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. A Christ-focused life is how we do it. Now, in sports, we also have a focus. We have a goal. We know what we want to do in football. We need to get the ball down the field. We need to score. That's our goal. And in wrestling, you're wrestling against the clock. You're wrestling against your opponent, and you have to score points. And you know what your goal is. Your goal is to be standing there at the end of the match with your hand raised in the air by the referee that you have just won the match. A Christ-focused life is focusing upon Jesus, the author and the finisher of our race. He is our life. He is all there is to us. He's not just a Sunday pastime. He's everything. So may we run with perseverance, focusing on the end game, which is living in relationship with Jesus. Yes, we're going to stumble and fall from time to time. But like in sports, when you get knocked down, you get up and you do it all over again. And that is what we do in the Christian life, is we live our life the best we can, focusing upon Jesus Christ, and we pick ourselves up and we follow him. Go in God's peace. Amen.